The cargo ship Vayara drifted through the outer rim, far from trade lanes and patrol routes. Its crew of 7 moved through their routines, checking cargo seals, running scans, and watching the endless black outside the windows. Most days were quiet out here, too quiet for some of them. That night, the quiet broke. A sharp tone rang through the comms, followed by a strange signal. The sound was rough, like an old recording, full of static, but beneath the noise was a voice speaking. In a language none of them recognized, it wasn't any of the 10 common tongues of the Coalition. The voice repeated a short phrase, slow and deliberate, before vanishing into the static again. The crew's pilot, a small insectoid named Vorik, tilted his head and ran the translation. Software, but the system only flashed an error message. Then the oldest among them, Captain Zoran, froze. His reptilian eyes widened, and for the first time in years, his hands trembled. He said he knew the word. It was human. The crew laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. Everyone knew humans were only old spacer stories. Monsters' parents used to scare hatchlings into behaving. They were said to be extinct, wiped out before. Most species even reached the stars. Zoran didn't laugh, said the phrase meant stay away. The crew sat in silence as the signal came again, louder this time, followed by a faint metallic bang, like something striking a hull. Then came another sound, faint but unmistakable gunfire. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. No one in this region of space used projectile weapons anymore, not for centuries. Lasers and plasma were cleaner, safer. The comm officer tried to block the signal, but the moment he touched the controls, the ship's main lights flickered. Gravity shifted for a second, making everyone stagger. Zoran barked at Vorik to check navigation. The pilot's claws moved over the controls, but his voice broke when he said they weren't moving anymore. Something was pulling them. The ship was caught in a slow but steady drift toward the coordinates where the signal originated. Helmsman tried full reverse thrust, but the engines roared without effect. It felt like a hand had reached out from the dark and taken hold of the Vayara. They passed the edge of the sensor range, and something strange began to appear on the display. At first, it was only a faint energy reading, barely there, like the shadow of a shadow. Then, slowly an outline formed. A ship. The crew stared at it, confused. It was small, no bigger than a patrol craft, but its design was unlike anything they had seen before, all sharp angles and solid plating. With no smooth curves like modern ships, it looked old, impossibly old. Yet the heat signatures spilling from it were massive, almost violent, like a star caged inside. Zoran's voice was low when he said he had seen sketches of ships like this in forbidden archives. He said they were war machines from the Lost Age. The others didn't believe him until the lights inside the strange vessel blinked on. One by one, like an animal opening its eyes in the dark, the Vayara's comms crackled, and for a moment, the bridge crew thought it was the same signal. But this voice was different. It was clearer, sharper, and though they could not understand the words, there was no mistaking the tone. Whoever spoke was issuing a warning. Then the voice repeated itself in broken Coalition standard. The translation was rough, but the meaning hit like cold iron. Identify yourselves. The crew hesitated. Varric's fingers hovered over the comms. Switch. But before he could reply, the ship outside shifted position. It moved with slow, deliberate precision, turning its nose directly toward the Vayara. A sudden blip appeared on the sensor panel. Not a weapon lock, not exactly something stranger. The ship was scanning them, but the scan felt wrong. The crew could feel it, a faint vibration through the deck plates. As if the strange vessel wasn't just reading their systems, but their very hull. Then, without warning, the cargo ship's internal lights flickered again.
Oh, yes.
Every system on the bridge went dark for a heartbeat before coming back online. In that heartbeat of darkness, they all heard something new over the comms, not a voice, not a gunshot, but a single slow breath, like someone was standing right behind them. The moment the lights returned, the strange ship vanished from visual range. It didn't jump to faster than light. It didn't move away. It simply wasn't there anymore. The sensor still showed faint energy, but it was moving now, circling them in wide arcs. Zoran's voice was tight as he ordered everyone to battle stations, but there was no way to fight something they couldn't see. The crew's hearts pounded as they tried to track it, but the readings kept slipping away like water through their fingers. Then the coms came alive one last time. The voice, still human, spoke only 4 words in perfect, unbroken standard. Last chance. Turn back. Before anyone could respond, something struck the Vayara. The hull groaned under the impact, metal shrieking. It wasn't a weapon blast. It was a hit, like another ship ramming them just hard enough to push. Spun slightly, and as it did, the alien crew caught a glimpse through the viewport. For the briefest second, there it was again, the dark ship, close enough to touch. Its hull marked with strange symbols and the faded image of a blue and white sphere. And just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone again, melting back into the void, leaving only silence and the echo of that warning. The Vayara floated in uneasy silence, its crew shaken but trying not to show it. The strange ship had vanished, leaving no trace on scanners except for faint energy ripples, fading like echoes in still water. Captain Zoran ordered damage reports, and the engineering crew confirmed that nothing vital was broken. Yet all of them admitted feeling a strange vibration through the hull, as if the ship had been touched by something alive. Varric, still, pale under his chitin, insisted they leave immediately. But their navigation showed a problem. The gravitational pull was still there, dragging them toward the coordinates of the signal. They weren't free, no matter how much they fought the engines. It was as if the space around them had decided where they were going, and no technology could argue otherwise. Minutes later, the outline of a derelict ship emerged from the dark. It was larger than the first vessel they saw, maybe 3 times the size of the Vayara, but it looked like it had been through centuries of war. Massive scorch marks ran across its hull, metal twisted as if by great heat, and sections of armor. Plating were gone entirely, leaving deep scars. No lights were visible, no movement, no sign of life, yet the pull was coming from it. The moment they drifted within range, their ship's systems flickered again, and the docking clamps engaged without command input. The Vayara was being pulled into an open hangar bay, its magnetic fields activating like the derelict was expecting them. Inside, the bay was quiet and hollow, lined with shadows. The airlocks cycled automatically, as though the old ship's systems had decided they were. Welcome. Zoran ordered a small boarding team to investigate himself, Varric, the com officer Reen, and 2 armed crew. Their boots echoed on the metal floor, the sound unnerving in the empty vastness. The corridors were narrow and brutal in design. No elegance, only function. Some walls were blackened by old explosions, others pitted with bullet holes. Zoran ran his claw along the marks and confirmed they were from solid projectiles. That alone was enough to unsettle everyone. The deeper they went, the more they felt it. The ship wasn't entirely dead. Somewhere in its bones, faint power still hummed, almost like a heartbeat. They passed shattered doors and broken consoles until they reached what looked like a command deck. The room was dimly lit by one working display, its glass cracked but still alive. The console was old, older than anything they had trained on, but Zoran's claws found the release for the panel. Inside, he found a data core, scorched and dented, but intact enough to hold records. He hooked it to a portable reader, and the screen came alive with an audio log. A voice spoke through static. The language was unknown at first, but as the device translated, the meaning unfolded. Captain Reyes, Terran Defense Corps, enemy boarding in progress, hull breach on Deck 7, holding position. The voice was calm but sharp, like a blade. Kept honed for years, it went on, describing numbers, positions, and orders. Then it paused, and Reyes spoke again, this time with weight in every word, initiating return fire protocols. The next sound was a metallic clang, followed by a deep, thunderous noise, gunfire, the same kind they'd heard in the distress signal. Reen glanced nervously at the others. "This can't be real," he whispered. "Humans didn't exist. They were just—" He stopped when Zoran shot him a look. The captain didn't speak, but his grip tightened on the reader. The log cut off mid-sentence as if something had interrupted the recording. For a moment, There was only the faint hum of the derelict. Then the portable reader's light dimmed, and a new signal hissed through their comms. It was the same human voice from before. Clearer now, colder. "You shouldn't be here." The words echoed in their helmets as the deck beneath them trembled. Somewhere in the ship's dark corridors, metal groaned as if something heavy was moving closer. The boarding team turned, weapons ready, scanning every shadow. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, came from behind them. Zoran's claw went to the cum to warn the Vayara. But the channel was filled with static. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the ship's emergency lights snapped on, bathing the command deck in deep red. A shadow passed across the hall, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an ancient pressure suit scorched and battered. The figure stood still, watching them from behind a dark visor. The cums clicked again, and the human voice spoke one final line. "You've brought them here." Before anyone could ask what that meant, the deck shuddered again, harder this time, and the sound of distant explosions rolled through the derelict. Zoran felt it in his chest, not an attack on them, but on the outside. Something else was arriving. It was coming fast. The Vayara's crew scrambled back aboard, sealing the airlocks as the derelict's docking bay shuddered again. The boarding team barely had time to stow their gear before Captain Zoran barked for full power to the engines. Outside, the black emptiness was no longer empty. Small, fast-moving objects darted between the distant stars, closing in on their position. The ship's sensors struggled to keep up, the readings glitching and stuttering as if something was jamming them. Reen tried to boost the signal, but all they got was a blur of movement too fast. "Too precise. Get us into cover," Zoran ordered, and Vorik swung the Vayara toward a nearby asteroid field. The massive rocks drifted lazily through the void, their shadows deep enough to hide a ship. The Vayara slipped between two of the larger ones, weaving through narrow gaps and jagged walls of stone. For a moment, it seemed they might have shaken pursuit, then Varric's voice cracked. "Something's here." At first, no one saw it. The scanners showed nothing, and the space around them was still. But then Reen swore he caught movement out the viewport, a shape sliding silently between two boulders. It was humanoid, in a suit, leaping effortlessly across the gap without any propulsion. The figure vanished behind a rock, only to appear again, closer this time. "That's impossible," Reen whispered. No one in the coalition had the strength or precision to do that without tether lines or thrusters. Before they could react, the cums came alive with a voice they all recognized, the human. "Identify yourselves. Last warning." The tone was calm, but every word carried weight, like a threat wrapped in politeness. Zoran hesitated, then opened a channel to speak, but the space outside erupted before he could answer. One of the smaller asteroids ahead shattered into thousands of pieces. The explosion strangely controlled, the fragments drifting away in neat, harmless arcs. Varric's claws danced over the controls. That wasn't random. Someone's steering us. Crew realized it at the same moment. They weren't hiding in the asteroid field. They were being herded. The fragments from the explosion drifted just far enough to block escape routes, forcing the Vayara deeper into the maze. The human voice returned, quieter this time. "Keep moving," no one argued. Zoran motioned for silence as they obeyed, slipping between narrow passes while keeping every sensor and viewport fixed on the shadows. The deeper they went, the more the field seemed to twist in impossible ways. Massive rocks rotated against the natural drift, forming new corridors while closing others. The crew began to suspect the field itself was being manipulated. Then, without warning, the scanners cleared, and a single ship appeared on the display. The same Blackhand silver vessel they had seen before. This time it wasn't cloaked in darkness. It moved with deliberate ease, sliding between asteroids as if they were standing still. Its hull marked with the faded letters, U.S. Vigilant. Human ship matched their speed, keeping just ahead of them. Every time the Vayara tried to change course, the Vigilant adjusted to block escape. Then, in one swift movement, it pulled ahead and fired, not at them, but at a nearby asteroid. The impact sent a spray of rock fragments that slammed into the Veyara's path, forcing them to halt. The message was clear: stop running. The Vigilant slowed and drifted close enough for the crew to see its surface in detail. Its armor was pitted with ancient scars, yet it carried itself like a predator that had survived 1,000 hunts. Then came a new signal, a tight beam transmission directly to their bridge. The human captain's voice spoke just 6 words: "You've been followed. We'll deal with it." Before they could ask who or what had followed them, the Vigilant turned sharply and vanished into the asteroid shadows. Seconds later, the pursuing contacts reappeared on the scanners, fast, aggressive, and closing in. This time, the readings didn't glitch. Whatever was coming for them wasn't bothering to hide. The first of the pursuing ships burst into view from behind a spinning asteroid, its hull jagged and bristling with weapons. It was followed by 3 more, each one moving with the sharp, aggressive precision of hunters closing in on prey. The Veyara's alarms wailed as the enemy locked weapons. Varric's hands flew over the controls, trying to weave between the rocks, but the pursuers were too fast, too coordinated.
Ow.
Their plasma cannons flared to life, bathing the asteroid field. In sudden blue light, the first blast missed, striking a nearby asteroid and sending a shower of molten fragments spinning across their path. The second shot would have hit them dead on, but it never landed. A streak of kinetic fire cut across the darkness, punching straight through the enemy ship's plasma cannon and tearing half the vessel apart in one brutal hit. The debris scattered silently into the void. The shot had come from somewhere unseen, and it hadn't come from the Veyara. "Contact port side," Reen shouted, and the black and silver hull of the UES Vigilant emerged from behind a massive rock, guns already tracking the next target. Its movements were terrifyingly efficient. It didn't fire wildly like most ships in a dogfight. Every shot was precise, deliberate, and final. Another enemy ship turned to engage it, but before it could fire, the Vigilant's railguns punched a line of holes straight through its midsection. The enemy's engines flickered, sputtered, and died, seeing it drifting like a corpse in the dark. The remaining 2 hunters hesitated, weaving through the rocks to try and get a better angle. That hesitation cost them. Vigilant accelerated, suddenly using the asteroids themselves as cover, disappearing and reappearing in unpredictable bursts. Each time it emerged, it fired short, controlled bursts that crippled weapons, engines, and shields in seconds. It was surgical destruction, the kind of combat the Veyara's crew had never witnessed. One enemy ship tried to flee, kicking its engines into full burn. But the Vigilant matched speed effortlessly and fired a single shot that pierced the fleeing ship's fuel core. The vessel vanished in a silent explosion of light and twisted metal. The last hunter turned toward the Veyara, perhaps out of desperation, charging its plasma cannons for a point-blank kill. Zoran opened his mouth to order evasive action, but the Vigilant was already there. It appeared from directly above, sliding between 2 tumbling asteroids, so close its armor scraped rock. In one fluid motion, it disabled the enemy's shields with a blast to the emitter array, then punched through the bridge with a railgun round. The enemy went still, drifting without power. The Vigilant didn't fire again. Instead, it slowly turned its nose toward the Veyara. A transmission cut through the comms, the human captain's voice clear and steady. "Scan down your engines. Are disabled. We are coming aboard, as if to prove it." A warning light flashed on Varric's console. The Vigilant had just tagged their ship with precision EMP bursts, shutting down propulsion without harming anything else. The docking clamps engaged again, and moments later, the sound of boots echoed in the Veyara's forward airlock. The crew tensed, weapons ready, but when the doors slid open, only one figure stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a battered black pressure suit marked with faded symbols, the figure removed their helmet. The human's face was pale, eyes sharp and calculating. No one spoke for a moment. The human looked over the crew, his gaze lingering on Zoran. Then he spoke, voice low but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Who woke them up?" The question made no sense, but the way he said it felt like a warning. Zoran asked who he meant, but the human only shook his head. "If you don't know, then you've made things worse. Before the crew could press him for answers, the ship's external sensors lit up again. Something else was arriving. The alarms on the Veora screamed again, but this time the readings on the sensor display were unlike anything the crew had seen before. Dozens of new contacts appeared all at once, materializing from the void as if they had been hiding just beyond perception. They were massive warship-sized, but their shapes were wrong, too perfect, too symmetrical. The hulls were smooth, reflecting no light, their edges sharp and precise. They moved in total silence, in perfect formation, without the slightest drift or error. Even at this distance, the crew could see no windows, no visible weapons, no signs of life. The human didn't look surprised. His eyes narrowed as he studied the incoming fleet. "They found us faster than I expected," he muttered, almost to himself. Zoran asked who they were, and the answer came with a weight that made the air feel heavier. "They are machines. Killers built for one purpose. They don't negotiate. They don't stop. And once they know where you are already dead." Veara's crew stared at the tactical display. More ships were arriving every second, forming a tightening net around the asteroid field. Varric's claws trembled over the controls. "We can't get past that," he said. The human shook his head. "Oh, you can't. But we can." He tapped his helmet, activating a cum channel, and began speaking in the same language they had. Heard in the ancient audio log, Zerd Wren asked what these machines wanted. The human turned to him, his expression unreadable. "They were created to fight wars no organic species could survive. Centuries ago, the galaxy's rulers feared us more than they feared them, so they turned the machines on us." His gaze hardened. It worked. Almost. The deck vibrated with a deep thrum as the Vigilant powered up fully. Through the viewport, the black and silver warship moved into open space, angling itself toward the incoming machine fleet. The machines made no attempt to hail, no warning shots. They simply began to close in, their perfect formation adjusting to surround the smaller ship. The human's voice cut through the Veera's comes again. "Stay here. Don't draw there. Attention. If you run, they'll chase you. And if they chase you, they'll find the others." Reen frowned. "Others? What others?" The human ignored him and gave a sharp order into his cum. A moment later, faint signatures began to appear. At the far edge of the field, more ships, each one as dark and angular as the Vigilant. They moved like predators slipping from cover, circling to surround the machine formation from the shadows. Zoran realized with a chill what he was seeing. "You still have a fleet?" he said softly. The human glanced back just long enough to answer, "Not a fleet. Survivors." The machine ships shifted again, their formation tightening. It was as if they had suddenly recognized the threat. Lines of white light began to form along their hulls, weapons charging with eerie silence. The human's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "They know now. There's no hiding." He keyed his cum once more. "All ships hold position until my mark." The Veera's crew could only watch as the enemy formation completed its circle. Every machine ship now facing inward toward the Vigilant. The silence was unbearable. Even the asteroid field seemed still, as if the entire sector was holding its breath. Then the human spoke 2 words. "They fire first." They did. Without warning, blinding lances of white energy cut through the dark, converging on the Vigilant's position. The blasts illuminated the asteroids, turning their shadows into jagged, flickering shapes. The human ship rolled hard, diving between incoming beams, its armor glowing from near misses. Machines adjusted instantly, their lines reforming to trap it. The first shots had been fired, and there would be no turning back. The first wave of machine fire tore through the asteroid field, carving molten scars into rock and shattering entire boulders into drifting clouds of debris. The Vigilant danced between the beams, twisting and rolling in ways the Veera's crew didn't think a ship of its size could move. Each near miss lit its black hole in flashes of white, but it kept coming, closing the gap instead of retreating. Then the human captain's voice came over the cum, no longer calm but edged with steel. "All ships fire." "Ow!" The darkness beyond the asteroid field erupted. One by one, the hidden signatures flared to life as the rest of the human ships decloaked, their engines igniting like sudden stars. Railguns thundered, missile bays spat streaks of fire, and energy cannons painted the void with bursts of blue and gold. The machine formation faltered almost instantly, their perfect lines breaking as precision strikes ripped into their hulls. The Vayara's crew stood frozen, watching the myth come alive before their eyes. The human ships didn't fight like the Coalition Navy. They didn't waste time with wide volleys or showy salvos. Every shot counted. A railgun burst would pierce an engine cluster and leave the rest of the target untouched, letting it drift dead into the path of another machine. Vessel. Missiles detonated not on impact, but in perfectly timed proximity bursts that crippled shields before a second ship finished the kill. It was ruthless, exact, and terrifyingly efficient. One machine destroyer broke formation and rushed the Vigilant head-on, its weapons glowing white-hot. The human warship rolled beneath its fire and delivered a single, devastating salvo along its underside. The destroyer split open in silence, its halves tumbling away into the black. Another machine vessel tried to flank the Vayara, but a smaller human frigate cut across its path, shredding it with a burst of auto-cannon fire, so dense it looked like a solid beam. Within minutes, the trap became a slaughter. Half the machine fleet was gone, the rest scattering in broken groups, their once perfect coordination in tatters. The humans pressed the advantage, driving them back toward the edge of the sector. The Vigilance captain issued his orders in short bursts over the comm, every word precise, his tone never wavering even as explosions flashed across the stars. When the last machine ship tried to flee, the humans let it. Zoran realized with a cold twist in his gut that it wasn't mercy, it was a message. The machines would carry the memory of this battle to wherever they came from, and they would. No humanity was not gone. As the field fell silent, the Vigilant drifted back toward the Vayara, its black hull scarred but unbroken. The docking clamps engaged once more, and the human captain stepped aboard. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply looked at Zoran and spoke in that same steady voice. "You've seen what we are. Tell your people. The humans are back, and the galaxy has a choice to make." The Vayara's crew exchanged glances, none of them speaking. Outside, the human ships faded back into the dark, vanishing one by one until only the Vigilant remained, and then even it was gone. Asteroid Field was quiet again. The silence felt different now, heavy, waiting, as the Vayara turned for home. Zoran knew their warning would spread faster than any official report. The myths were real. The legends walked again. And somewhere, in the shadows of the galaxy, humanity was already preparing for the next fight.